What's up, Meta Nerds? This video is all about the IT-0 Interrogator Droid. It was developed by the Imperial Department of Military Research, along with the ISB, the much-feared Imperial Security Bureau. What's interesting is that under Republic law, droids that were made for torturing people were actually illegal to produce. And even when the Republic became the Empire, they were still banned by the Senate. And so this droid was actually a secret project that was withheld from both the public and elected officials. And it was the ISB that came up with the list of abilities they wanted this droid to have. And it was the Department of Military Research which went to work producing the thing. And when the Interrogator Droid was finished, it was a technical work of art. Because even though it was 0.3 meters or about 1 foot wide, and only had a weight of 10 kilograms or about 22 pounds, its creators were able to pack this thing full of state-of-the-art torture equipment. It had two different ways to electrocute you, one through your standard arc emitter, but it also had a probe that could connect to your nervous system and electrocute you that way. It also had crimpers that it would apply to the victim's joints or pressure points, along with flesh peelers that could take off thin layers of its victim's skin. And it had a really unique weapon that would emit sound waves that could penetrate its victim's body and agitate its internal organs. To help make sure that all of these tools operated efficiently, that big red photoreceptor eye allowed the droid to scan the prisoner, determine what species it is, its vital signs, and which parts of its anatomy were most susceptible to torture. But perhaps its most effective weapon was its chemical drug injector. One of the chemicals that it used was Bavo-6. This was a notorious truth serum, which would also make its victims hallucinate and become extremely paranoid. The other drug was called OV-600. This one didn't mess with the victim's mind, but instead would interact with the chemical signals that were produced when the prisoner tried to lie. Every time they weren't telling the truth, their body would break out in a very painful rash. Now let me explain what went down during a normal interrogation session. First, the interrogator would walk into the room with the probe droid hovering by his side. The droid would make its way to the prisoner, and the first round would be that truth serum that also had the hallucinogenic effect. While the victim was freaking out, the probe droid was also running that body scan that we talked about earlier. If the victim was still unwilling to give up any information, the interrogator would tell the droid to use one of its many tools on those sensitive body parts that it just discovered. This could go on for hours, or however long it needed to get the information needed. But the whole time, this droid also had a recording device so that they would have proof of their prisoner's confession in their own words. Another strategy employed by the ISB was to let the droid do an interrogation on its own at first. This would make the prisoner learn to hate the droid and look at the human interrogator more as a friend and someone that they could confide in. Kind of like a good cop, bad cop strategy. Now these things were used throughout the reign of the Empire, and luckily when Darth Vader used one to interrogate Princess Leia, he didn't use any of the tools that would physically maim her, like the skin peeler or the joint pincers, but he did employ that mind-altering drug, and was able to combine this with his already strong Force abilities to try and tunnel into Leia's mind, making her believe that she was in immense physical pain, and he even tried to convince her that he was her friend, and that he was a part of the rebellion. But through her immense willpower, and perhaps with a little bit of help from her Force abilities, she never did give up the hidden location of the rebel base. Now what's interesting is these things also ran security for Moff Rebus, even though the ISB didn't want to share any of these droids with any other branch of the Empire. And eventually the IT-0 interrogator was replaced with the IT-3. So that's where its history ends. But before you go, you definitely want to hear these cool facts and some behind the scenes stuff. In the Rebels TV show, we see how an interrogator droid tried to probe the mind of Canon Jarrus. But like most Jedi, their willpower was simply too strong, and the interrogation job had to be handed over to the Grand Inquisitor. It said that that light strip in the middle of the interrogator droid could actually hypnotize some species. And some interrogator droids had a terrifying ability to squirt acid on its victims. And have you ever seen this? A mistake in A New Hope was that you could still read British Made along the droid's hypodermic needle. Try and see if you can spot it next time you're watching episode 4. That's it for the IT-0 Interrogator Unit Droid. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button, and be sure to leave a comment down below if I missed any cool facts, or if you have a suggestion for future videos. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at MetaNerdsLore, so you can see us build Star Wars props and cosplays, along with some other cool Star Wars stuff. If you want to help support this channel, check out the description below for our Amazon store and our Patreon. And be sure to subscribe, because we're making videos like this every single day. But more important than all that, remember, never give up the location of the hidden rebel base, and the Force will be with you, always.